I am in the year 744, there are still 5 years until Bulma meets Goku, and 17 years for Red Eyes to reach the planet Earth. I have plenty of time to carry out my plans. First of all, let's play a joke on the prankster, said Broly while using the Kai, teleporting. North Kai planet. North Kai was quietly washing his car when, suddenly someone appeared right in front of him, a little boy with 3 eyes on his face. North Kai and Bubbles, his loyal pet, were surprised by the sudden appearance of that person and stopped doing everything they were doing. This is not where I parked my car, said Broly trying to hold his laugh. Hey what? Said North Kai, not understanding what he was referring to. I see you haven't caught my joke, it hurts, you have no sense of humor, said Broly showing disappointment. North Kai was quite outraged by Broly's claim, he was the North Kai, an inveterate prankster recognized throughout the galaxy. How could he say that he had no sense of humor? The fact that someone told him he had no sense of humor was an affront to his honor that he couldn't tolerate, however. His indignation dissipated quickly as he realized a detail in the strange boy in front of him. He was not surprised by the strange eye he had on his forehead, but by the tail of a monkey that danced in the air, as if he were doing on purpose. North Kai stepped back several times in fear and said, "HH. An evil scion. What does one of you do on my planet? Have you come to conquer it?" Broly, feigning outrage, said, "How come I'm evil? The fact that I am Scion doesn't mean that I am evil, not all Scion are obsessed with destroying and conquering planets. Let's go to the point. I'm here because we've done an analysis of your planet and it seems interesting, despite being so small can be sold at a good price in the collector's market for its rarity." "A pity, I'll have to kill you," said Broly, preparing a green energy ball. North Kai and Bubbles panicked by his words and the energy Broly was showing. Despite his small size, that child was so strong that they couldn't do anything to prevent the destruction. "No please, don't kill us, we are too young to die." Broly dissipated his energy ball and laughing said, "Ha ha ha, is joke North Kai. I didn't come here to kill you or to conquer your planet." North Kai, who had taken refuge in his house, poked his head out the window, relieved by the words of Broly. "So, what are you doing here?" asked North Kai, who had come out of hiding. "Nothing in particular, I had heard you were an eminence in martial arts, but I think they have exaggerated too much," said Broly from the sky, descending slowly to the small planet. North Kai, outraged by the hoax and how that child had disrespected him, and his reputation. "I see you're an ignorant who confuses combat power with being an eminence in martial arts. My combat power may not be very big, but I have incredible techniques, for which thousands of people line up to learn them and for me to train them," North Kai said, sticking out his chest. "Oh, really? Can you show them to me?" Broly said casually, without showing excessive interest, but laughing inside. North Kai laughed proudly, and as he did the important said, "Well, I could consider it if you tell me a good joke." "I expected it, but we'll see who is the one who laughs," Broly asked, making himself the surprised. "A joke?" North Kai, to answer his question, said, "That's right, a joke, for example. What's the only dog in the world who cannot bark?" "A hot dog." He, said North Kai, laughing while covering his mouth. Broly, with a disinterested attitude, said, "I'm sorry, but I just tell jokes before a broad audience, and they have to be good jokes. I have my demands as a professional." North Kai felt somewhat outraged. He believed that this child was taking him lightly, he did not believe in his abilities, and that's why he did not even want to try, and of course he had also underestimated his sense of humor. "Well, if there's no joke, I'm not going to show you my techniques," he said as he turned back to Broly. "Are you sure?" Broly asked, standing with his back to the angry North Kai. "Yeah, I'm sure," North Kai said angrily. "For nothing in the world?" Broly asked, with a childish tone. "Yes, for nothing in the world," North Kai said, reaffirming once more. "Oh. It's a shame, just when I wanted to offer you a gift," Broly said once more in a childish tone. "No matter what you promise, my answer will remain the same," North Kai said, crossing his arms and looking at the sky. "Well, it's a pity. I had heard the rumor that you are a great lover of cars. That's why I wanted to give you this latest model, of my Mercedes-Maybach 6 Cabriolet of gold and platinum. It's a great pity. I thought that you would love this model." The moment Broly finished his sentence, a car appeared from nowhere, a car that only can be defined by a masterpiece, a work of art that no collector could stop looking. North Kai, who had been listening to everything Broly said, he noticed that something quite big had appeared out of nowhere, and that his antennae were moving at an alarming rate for some reason. He turned to see what had appeared, and as soon as he saw what there was, he fell in love with that car. He couldn't believe there could be such a beautiful thing in the galaxy. And at the same time, he regretted what he said moments ago. It's the most beautiful car I've seen in my long life. If the other Kais saw me driving it, surely they would die of envy. I must get it, even if I have to swallow my words. North Kai, with an attitude that had undergone a 180-degree change, said as he approached Broly. Well, I think I've been carried away by my emotions, and it's not right to refuse a gift, maybe. But Broly, without letting him finish the sentence, it's a pity you don't want it, it's a unique model. Anyway, Broly said that he created an energy sphere and threw it at the car. Boom! Spraying it in a second. North Kai, realizing what had happened, he felt as if his soul had broken. No! North Kai, with his mouth wide open and with tears in his eyes, approached Broly and, crying with rage, asked him, why did you do that? It was the most perfect car that has ever existed, it did not deserve such an end. Broly, pretending he did not understand the reason for North Kai's attitude, said, you told me you would not accept it, and I did not need it, so I destroyed it. Did you happen to want it? Broly asked, making it look like he realized he had done something wrong. North Kai threw himself on the ground with his legs crying for the loss and answered, yes. I loved it very much. A lot. Broly asked with a slightly malevolent laugh. Yes, very much, I had never seen a work of art as perfect as that car, North Kai said while trying to dry some tears that stopped falling from his eyes. As much as to teach me your techniques? Broly asked with a clearly evil laugh. As much as to sell you my soul if necessary. North Kai said, totally desperate, as if he had seen the death of his family. Broly laughed like the inspector's bad gadget and said, I don't need that much, but here you have it, remember your promise. Broly snapped his fingers and the landscape destroyed with pieces of scattered car changed radically, the car that seemed destroyed returned to normal, as majestic as before. North Kai, with a sentimental chaos, in which stupefaction, joy, and anger came together, he turned to Broly and said, what did you just do? Have you cheated on me all this time? Did not you destroy it? Has it been an illusion? Broly, trying to hold back the laugh, said, I guess the answer is, yes, to all, ha ha ha. Come on, don't get angry like that, I thought you liked jokes. North Kai, who hadn't yet recovered from the emotional disorder that Broly had caused him, thought. This child is a bastard. I almost prefer the scion who destroy planets. Come on, don't put on this face, if you show me your techniques the car is all yours, said Broly, shaking a key. He, poor thing, he probably thinks that the jokes are over. North Kai, at Broly's promise, he regained his spirits, so much that he almost forgot how he had deceived him a few seconds ago. So grateful and so eager was he to get that car that practically treated him as if he were his best friend. Okay, if you insist so much, I'll show you, but first you'll need to pass some tests that. North Kai stopped short his sentence, as Broly again pointed to the car with a ball of energy, he quickly caught the message. Okay. I've already caught the message, no tests. Mother of God, these young people don't have patience. Broly cancelled his attack. North Kai sighed and said, the first technique I'll teach is called Kaioshin, it's an awesome technique, you'll see, HM. It is a technique that multiplies the user's ki, thus increasing their power and speed. North Kai observed the facial expression of Broly, and saw that he was surprised, which made him be proud of himself and his creation. Impressive, right? Broly, with a casual attitude, said, yes, it is quite impressive that someone has created a technique so similar to mine. The fun starts. North Kai, who was still in his narcissistic world, said, true, yes. It is impressive that. Hey. What have you said? It is impossible that anyone could have invented, but immediately left his speech since Broly was performing exactly the same technique he had created but had been unable to use, the Kaioshin. North Kai's face was as green as a Namekian's, a child so small had performed one of his two secret techniques as if nothing, this is impossible, it cannot be happening. But Broly interrupted him, yes, very interesting. I already knew it, what's the other? North Kai, trying to recover the tranquility thinking about his future new car that dwarf bastard had promised him, since he still had an ace up his sleeve, he said, okay, we'll talk later. How did you discover that technique? now I'm going to show you one that you cannot possibly know. I call it Spirit Bomb. Spirit Bomb gather huge amounts of energy from all chosen surrounding life forms and inanimate objects to conduct that energy into a massive sphere of astounding destructive power. What do you tell me about this? Surely you don't know that, right? Broly, as if he did not want the thing, made a simplified version of the Spirit Bomb in his hand and said, is it something like this? North Kai was on the verge of a depression. Broly, faking disappointment, said, what a waste of time, I've come here, I've given a car and I haven't learned anything. I get to know, and I don't come. North Kai, who looked like a soul in pain, approached Broly barely without energy and asked him as if it were his last will, please, tell me how you got those techniques, I beg you. Broly, trying to retain all the evil inside him, answered, the truth is that I had a day in the bathroom, I was defecating, one thing led to the other and I came up with these two techniques. I was a little inspired that day. With those words, North Kai turned completely pale, his antennae fell like leaves in the fall, he was completely petrified, like a corpse during the rigor mortis, his eyes, despite being covered by a pair of sunglasses, was empty, looking at nowhere. It seemed as if he had passed out standing, and tried to commit suicide by holding his breath. A scion boy under 10 has gotten a few minutes of being in the bathroom more than me in hundreds of years. I don't want to continue living. It's a joke, man, these are your techniques. I gathered the 7 Dragon Ball and I wanted among other things the best techniques of the universe, and the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb were some of them, that's why I had come to visit you. I was just kidding, said Broly, patting North Kai on the back. Once he regained consciousness, the desire to live, and increased the desire to kill that dwarf bastard. He was surprised by a detail of what Broly had said, Dragon Ball. Those on the planet Namek? As I planned, he told me about the planet Namek. Broly, making himself the stranger, said, Planet Namek? What do you mean? If you don't know Namek, where did you use the Dragon Ball? Asked North Kai, since the Dragon Ball is an object that only the Namekians can create, and there are only Namekians in Namek. From the Earth, Broly replied. From the Earth? North Kai asked. Yes, the current Kami of Earth created them, they are a bit limited, but the results are pretty decent, said Broly, directing the conversation to where he wanted. North Kai was surprised by the declaration of Broly, but soon understood what happened. By chance the Kami of the Earth is green and has antennae. Yeah, he's also a little wrinkled and lately with some fart problems, said Broly, trying to hold his laugh. Then your Kami is a native inhabitant of Namek, and not a normal one, very few are able to create Dragon Balls, North Kai said, surprised. North Kai explained about the Namekians, seeing that Broly showed interest in them. North Kai explained everything he knew, including the coordinates of the planet Namek. Well, I go back to Earth to talk with Kami, my intuition tells me that he doesn't know about his origins. Enjoy your new car. We'll see each other again, said Broly, tossing the keys to North Kai and then disappearing. North Kai was relieved by Broly's disappearance and extremely cheerful as he observed the key in his hand, headed dancing to his new car. Oh. That child is a real bastard, but he is very generous, he. It's the best gift I have ever received, North Kai said as he entered the beautiful and comfortable interior of his luxurious convertible car. Nervously he sat in the driver's chair to drive him for the first time, and once he sat down. A loud bang of fart exploded from the chair where the poor North Kai was sitting, so powerful was the sound that North Kai shot out of the car, dropping to the ground 5 meters ahead. When North Kai regained consciousness, he looked forward and saw a note that was 5 centimeters in front of him. Hello, North Kai. I forgot to mention that there was a small fart cushion inside the chair. Don't forget to remove it before mounting, or something dangerous could happen. Fondly. Broly. North Kai was red due to rage. He understood perfectly that Broly's bastard had placed precisely this note in this position, since he calculated that it would be here where North Kai would land after sitting down. He had teased him again. Broly! North Kai shouted to the sky, in the direction of the earth. Ha 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 ha. I know I'm repeating myself with this joke, but never underestimate a classic. The extreme fart has always been a humorous element in all cultures. The fart unites us as living beings. Why was Broly doing this, besides having fun? He already knew the direction of planet Namek, he didn't need to come to see North Kai for this. However, he needed someone to give him that official information. There were people like Whis who could investigate the past. It would be very suspicious if he knew so many things, even with the wish of the Dragon Balls. Besides, he also needed a contact in the other world for future operations, and who better than the recognized North Kai who had helped the Z Warriors so much? Well, it's time to continue with my plan, get the power. Let's see how our dear Kami is, surely he is dying to see me. Temple of Kami. Kami was on the outskirts of Kami's temple, sitting in the robotic chair that Broly had given him, chair from which Mr. Popo had already removed the bag of farts. This place is so peaceful, especially since Broly is gone. I miss times like these, said Kami-sama, with a face that showed an indescribable happiness and tranquility. But suddenly, Broly appeared in front of him, only an inch from his face. Hi Kami, I have interesting news for you. Ha! Kami shouted in fright, falling backwards from the chair. Oh no! He's back. Hi Kami, hello Popo, sorry to come without warning, but I have fresh news about Kami's origin. And I don't know if you know, said Broly, raising Kami with telekinesis. Kami and Mr. Popo had enough reasons to recriminate and criticize Broly. His farewell had left them with several surprises, but they were too intrigued by what he had to say to them to change the subject, since Kami had lost his childhood memories of a blow to the head, the original Goku. Broly explained what North Kai had told him about Namek, its inhabitants, and the cataclysm that the planet suffered. Mr. Popo and Kami were surprised by the news, but not too much since everything what Broly said fit perfectly with Kami and his past. It was evident that he was telling the truth. In short, the god of the planet Earth is an alien. What would the nationalist Earthlings think if they knew? Broly said, trying to bring a comical vision to the tense situation. Yes, it seems pretty funny, said Kami, who was surprised by his past, and by knowing that he still had family in another world. What do you say Kami, are you coming to visit your world with me? Broly asked casually. Kami, suspicious of Broly's intentions, asked, why are you so interested in going to the planet Namek, and why do you want me to accompany you? I find it very curious. Broly, pretending to be offended by Kami's words, Kami, you offended me. Do you think I'm a person who only does things if they benefit him? That I am some kind of evil being who has ulterior motives in everything he does? Kami stared at him, he didn't say anything, but his silence said more than any word. Broly had to confess, okay, it's okay, I confess. The truth is that I would like to use the Dragon Ball of Namek for a little thing, that apparently yours cannot do. I thought that if I went with you, to speak well of me, the person who has managed to reunite you with your family, I wouldn't have many obstacles. Kami, somewhat calmer to know Broly's intentions, said, I would love to accompany you, but I'm afraid I cannot accompany you. I am the Kami of the Earth, I cannot get away from the planet now. I cannot abandon my functions. Also, I don't think I should go yet. But don't worry, I will give you a letter in which I will talk about you, surely when the person in charge will help you, said Kami. It seems he doesn't want to go, partly because he split into two parts. Creating Piccolo. I guess he feels embarrassed in some way. Kami handed him a letter written on Namekian. He told him to give it only to the leader of the Namekians and not to read it. Broly, despite being a bastard, he respected Kami's wishes and wouldn't spy. Thank you very much Kami. See you soon, said Broly, teleporting. When Kami realized that the danger had passed, he sighed and said, I'd rather not see you too soon. I hope they pay attention to my letter and nothing bad happens to them. Brothers, for your sake, listen to me, said Kami to himself. In some place of outer space, Broly appeared. The most surprising thing of all is that he seemed to be able to survive in the vacuum of space without any problem. Thing that at first was impossible for any scion. Broly just appeared and created a clone. I will send 49% for my BC plan and my original 50% for the AB plan. Both disappeared. The original body traveled to the planet Namek. To save time, Broly appeared directly in front of the Great Patriarch, right in front of his great body. Before he could talk, Nail, the Patriarch's faithful guardian, acted. Be careful Patriarch, he said as he ran toward Broly, but he never reached him. Using telekinesis, Broly held him in the air, making impossible for him to move forward. Both the Great Patriarch and Nail quickly understood something about Broly. He was too powerful. They couldn't do anything against him. I have already shown my power, now it's time to show my kind face. Wow, you are very similar to Cammy. Good morning, my name is Broly, and it came in the name of my dear friend Cammy. He is a Namekian who escaped from the planet Namek during the Cataclysm and who is now the guardian of our planet. Although I would also need you to help me with a little thing, if you could be so kind, said Broly, respectfully introducing himself. The Great Patriarch, quite interested in what Broly had said, asked, a Namekian who escaped. Yes, a Namekian who knows how to create Dragon Balls. I have come here among other things for you to help me with a wish I want to ask your Dragon Balls, said Broly, trying to be more specific. The Great Patriarch, with a smile, said, oh, he must be the son of Katas, that child was a prodigy. It doesn't surprise me that he has become the guardian of a planet. It is a relief to know that he is safe and sound. I suppose he hasn't come because he has his obligations to attend as guardian of his planet, in the same way that I have others. As for the wish, we need to talk about it among the different leaders. Broly, who feared that the process of asking for his wish would be too long, decided to take out the letter that Cammy gave him, to expedite the process. Cammy handed me this letter for you to read. He told me that with this you would surely help me, said Broly, delivering the letter to the Great Patriarch with telekinesis. Surely this letter explains how great I am and how much I have helped them in these 5 years. The Great Patriarch opened the letter and read it carefully several times, interspersing the reading with observing Broly. After several minutes of deliberating internally, he said, okay, you can use the Dragon Ball. I'll send some messages to the other villages. In a few hours everything will be ready. Thank you very much, Patriarch. If you'll excuse me, I'll be absent for a moment. I'll be back soon, said Broly as he disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared. When he diapered, Nail, that had been listening all the conversation suspended in the air, fell to the ground. Great Patriarch, are you sure to let that person use the Dragon Ball? Nail asked, which for some reason or another, didn't like Broly. Yes, I think it's the best we can do, said the Great Patriarch, not overly motivated by his decision. Great Patriarch, what did that letter say? Nail asked, who understood that the reason behind the Patriarch's actions was due to that letter. Read it yourself, Nail. The Great Patriarch handed the letter to Nail. Nail read the letter and was surprised by the contents of it. Namekians, please. Do what he tells you. If you don't please him, it is very likely that he will be day and night embittering your life. He is not a bad boy. I do not think he asks for anything bad, and I doubt he will hurt any of you, but pay attention to me, for your mental health. Do what he asks you. Please. PDT, don't sit down in anything that he gives you. Nail, with cold sweat on his forehead and antennae, thought. What the hell is this boy? Broly appeared in an uninhabited place on the planet Namek. Time to create my second ambassadorship, said Broly, concentrating on his Nen. Broly was about to use one of the skills he had discovered he possessed over the years. In Hunter x Hunter there were characters with special properties or advantages in some aspect of their Nen, like Neferpitu. They had a special an N with an irregular shape, which could deform and move freely, avoiding distributing the N equally in a circular way. Broly had discovered that his N had a special ability too. He could fragment it. Broly could extract part of his N and leave it parked in a specific area. With it, whatever distance he was, he would be able to detect perfectly at every moment everything covered by that N. This skill not only allowed him to separate his N for remote monitoring, also allowed him to separate his Formless realm, which was directly connected to his N. With this, Broly could inject part of his Formless realm inside that separated N, being able to enter and exit from it without any problem in that area through his Formless realm. He called this skill ambassadorship. Broly, after creating his ambassadorship, returned to where the Great Patriarch was. Hi friends, are the Dragon Balls ready yet? Said Broly, appearing out of nowhere. The Namekians who hadn't yet seen him were surprised by his appearance and energy. Nail, acting as a spokesperson, told Broly, they will be here in a few minutes. By the way, what is the wish you want to ask? Broly smiled mischievously and replied, we'll all know in a few seconds. It will depend on whether I get the information I want elsewhere. But before that I need to ask Patriarch for another small favor. Zuno's home planet. Zuno, the traditional stereotype Japanese alien who knew everything, accompanied by his 2 mini-selves, were drinking tea. Some hooded man appeared behind them and put 3 swords of energy near their necks. The hooded person said in a sinister and threatening way. You won't ask any questions. You won't make any movement. You won't try to find out who I am. You won't try to explain, and you will avoid knowing what happened here today. You won't speak unless I authorize you. Apart from that, you will answer my questions in a way that I don't need to ask you that same question again. If you have understood everything I said, nod. Zuno's fearing for his life and with cold sweat descending on his forehead, he nodded without thinking. Well, I'm glad you understand the situation. First question. How do you know so many things? Asked the hooded person. I have the ability to know the answer to the questions that are asked or I formulate myself, sir, said Zunos, fearing for his life. Pleased by the response the hooded man said, interesting, very interesting. Well, now my second and maybe that last question. What are the exact coordinates of the Super Dragon Balls? Zuno, hearing about the Super Dragon Ball, hesitated for a second. Second in which the energy sword came closer to the neck of the three. Seeing that he wasn't bluffing, ended up answering about the location of the 7 Super Dragon Ball that were between universes 6 and 7. Thank you very much for your help, and remember your promise. Be quiet, fatty, said that mysterious person before disappearing as suddenly as appeared. In outer space, in a place far from the universe 7. The mysterious hooded man who seconds ago was threatening Zuno, appeared as if by magic in front of an uninhabited planet. That person concentrated energy in his hand, forming a sphere of green energy. After concentrating enough energy in that sphere, he threw it against the planet, creating a big explosion. Due to the explosion that this caused, the impact and fragments ripped that person's cloak. Indeed, he was our favorite anti-hero. Broly, or more specifically, the clone with only 49% of his power. Broly with great satisfaction watched the destruction that his attack had caused, but above all, what revealed. In front of him was a Dragon Ball, a colossal Dragon Ball with the size of a planet. It has been very easy to find the first, it's been worth it. It wasn't necessary to resort to Zuno, since I have built a quite powerful Dragon Ball radar, but, this is much faster. Nor was it necessary to threaten him in that way, but... Although I don't agree with Zamasu on some things, I must admit that this psychopath knew how to be effective. In addition, I don't want to give my first kiss in this life to an obese man to get a GPS address. Now all you have to do is request 2 wishes, and gather them all. Broly approached the Super Dragon Ball and touched the surface. When touched, on the surface Super Dragon Ball a green energy began to devour the colossal Super Dragon Ball with the size of a planet, very slowly. It will take me a lot of time energy to shallow the 7 Super Dragon Balls in my formless realm, but it is better than having them in view of everyone. Likewise, when I take them out, the used energy will come back to me. I'm only borrowing something from this universe 7 to mine universe, besides I'm doing it without interest. I am a generous and just person, for which the conditions of my abilities are also the same. Planet Namek. After a few hours 7 Namekians had brought the 7 Dragon Balls, everything was ready to make a wish. We have already collected the 7 Dragon Balls. Although there are certain limitations, you can ask for 3 wishes. Do you already know what wishes you are going to ask? The distrustful Nail asked Broly. In the end I just need to ask for 2 wishes, I don't want to abuse your kindness, Broly said politely. The Namekians upon hearing these words were more relieved and drastically improved the image they had of Broly. Besides, I cannot simply ask you for something so valuable without giving anything in return. That's why I brought gifts. Broly said as he took out several capsules from his formless realm. Broly threw them to the ground and from them appeared a large number of products dedicated to welfare, domestic tasks and agriculture. Products that Broly thought could interest them because of their hermit and quiet lifestyle dedicated to cultivate a Jaisa to return the planet Namek to its previous status. Broly explained to the surprised Namekians the functions of the different robotic devices that he gave them and how they should be used correctly. The Namekians thanked him enormously. These artifacts would help them greatly in their daily life. Especially they thanked him for the agricultural technology, thanks to it they would be able to cover the planet Namek with a Jaisa in a few years, returning to their planet the ancient splendor that it once had, before the cataclysm. The person who at first seemed to be a time bomb that threatened the peace of the peaceful life of the Namekians, the person they all suspected and tried to keep their distance and only fulfilled his demands by the letter they had received from one of their own, had proved to be their greatest benefactor. Even the proud and distrustful Nail had no choice but to thank Broly for everything he had done, and apologize for his previous behavior. Broly, something blushed by the flattery he was receiving, said, it hasn't been anything, ha ha ha. It's the least I can do when such nice people let me use their Dragon Balls. I don't want anyone to say on any planet that Broly is not a generous person. By the way Nail, before asking for the wish, I have a special gift for the great patriarch. Nail, still influenced by the gratitude he felt, took those words with joy. Broly had been very generous to all the inhabitants of the planet. In addition, the fact that Broly wanted to have a detail specifically for the patriarch, the most important and beloved person of all Namek, made him extremely happy, raising for him the status of Broly again. I have noticed that the patriarch is always sitting in his chair without being able to move. I suppose that due to its great size and age it must be complicated to go outside. That's why I thought this could be very useful, said Broly as he pulled out a large object from his formless realm. It was a large flying chair, similar to the one Frieza or Zuno had, but much larger, a large size that fit perfectly with the body of the great patriarch. With this chair, the great patriarch will surely be able to go abroad and visit the whole planet Namek without worry, apart it is very comfortable. I'm sure he'll be elated. The instructions are in the right side pocket, said Broly with a benevolent face, as if he were a kind of saint who hadn't committed any sin in his life. All the Namekians thanked him again for this great and fantastic gift, all except Nail, who had suddenly remembered a certain warning from the letter. Thank you very much for your kindness, Broly. I will give this gift to the great patriarch after you ask for your wish. I'm sure he will be enormously grateful, said Nail, who, although it was hard to notice, he didn't trust Broly so much anymore. Minutes later, Porunga, the dragon of planet Namek, was summoned. After the oldest Namekian there was in that place, he went to where the Dragon Ball were and said certain words in Namekian. After these words, the Dragon Balls began to shine more intensely and without pause. The sky began to darken and the atmosphere became incredibly unusual. From the Dragon Balls, a light appeared that extended towards the sky, and within a few seconds that light that seemed to envelop the sky materialized in a huge green muscular dragon with red eyes, which seemed to look at the ground with arrogance. Big, muscular and green. I love this Porunga, he reminds me someone. Someone very handsome, strong, intelligent and transformed. Ha ha ha. You have collected all 7 Dragon Balls and now as it is return. Think wisely and I will grant you 3 wishes within my power, said Porunga. The Namekian who had invoked Porunga told him, what is your wish? Tell me and I will tell Porunga on your behalf. Okay. My first wish is to know the language of the gods, said Broly. The Namekian asked the wish in his language. Nail, surprised by this desire, asked Broly, why do you want to know the language of the gods? Broly in a teasing tone said, to know if they speak ill of me and to insult them in their language, of course. Nail preferred not to insist, he knew he wouldn't get a serious answer. Porunga spoke, okay, I'll grant your wish. Porunga's eyes gleamed and a new language appeared in Broly's brain, the wish had been successful. The Namekian turned to Broly and asked, what is your second wish? Broly confidently said, it won't be necessary. Broly using the language of Namek said, my wish is very simple. I just want to be teleported to the universe 6-inch. The Namekian were surprised by the fact that he knew their language and by the wish he had formulated. Many wanted to ask him about both, but before they had the chance. Porunga spoke, okay, I'll grant your wish. Porunga's eyes sparkled and Broly began to gradually disappear. They could only hear a few last words of Broly before he disappeared completely. I learned Namekian in a 40-hour online course, then disappeared. The Namekian present didn't have too much time to assimilate everything that had happened and had been said, but quickly regained their composure. After a few seconds they spoke again. What a strange child, but we have to be grateful, he has given us a lot in exchange of very few. What do you think if we all go together to give the flying chair to the great patriarch? Asked one of the Namekians. They all backed that idea, except one. Nail without saying anything approached the flying chair, reached out and inspected the chair, and once he pressed the cushion. Pffffffffff. The sound of a fart echoed. The Namekians who were in that place were stunned by what had happened. What was that? Asked some Namekians. Nail was relieved to have discovered that joke and something angry with Broly said, I think we just found out what that letter was referring to. We have to be grateful to that Kami. Somewhere in the universe 6. A boy with 3 eyes and a monkey tail appeared on a planet similar to the planet Namek. So I'm already in universe 6. Perfect. While my clone is dedicated to collecting the other 2 Super Dragon Ball that are missing, I will dedicate myself to collecting those from this universe. It may turn into a dangerous journey, since it is likely that a certain overweight god of destruction is looking for them too. However, it's necessary. Only the Super Dragon Ball can grant me that wish. In the immensity of the space of the Universe 6, a spaceship made its appearance. A spaceship that belonged to the Peace Corps of Emperor Frost, the Emperor of the Universe. The beloved by all, the defender of peace and security, the one who solved all wars. Frost, the greatest and most famous warrior of justice that has existed in the history of the universe, awarded with the Universal Peace Prize 3 times in recognition of his actions. Or that's what everyone believed. That spaceship was making a routine patrol in remote areas in search of criminals, when suddenly they saw something that seemed impossible to them, or at least, the strangest thing they had ever seen in their lives. This was an area that they had patrolled for more than 5 years, so they knew perfectly every corner of that area, especially the position in which all the planets and asteroids were situated. Therefore, they were surprised that where there used to be a rocky and lifeless planet now there would be a strange orange spherical object of the same size with a spherical orang object with stars that could be seen from any angle, but that wasn't all. That gigantic object the size of a planet was being slowly devoured by a strange green energy, and although they were far away, thanks to the sophisticated sensors of the ship locate a small presence around it, which although small in size released a great energy. There was a person floating calmly in the void of space, a person of a small size, which they didn't know if he was a child or a race of people with small bodies. They couldn't identify what race he was quite muscular, his body was covered with a brown monkey fur, his hair was large, and he also had a monkey tail and a third eye in his forehead. They didn't know who he was, but something seemed obvious to them. This strange person was responsible for the disappearance of the planet, the appearance of the strange orange object and the inevitable disappearance of the orange object. Soldier A looked outside the ship and said, "We must report this immediately." Soldier B, who was also gazing at that visual spectacle, said, "Yes, I believe that with this we have earned the salary of the last 5 years of not finding anything at all." Peace Corps Headquarters. Frost was quietly in his floating chair observing the balance that his commercial strategy of false flag attacks were providing, when suddenly one of his lackeys came to his office to inform him about something. "Emperor Frost, sorry for bothering you, but I think there's something interesting you should see," said the elite lackey. Frost, who knew that the lackey would not interrupt him for something banal, showed interest. "Tell me, what is it?" The elite lackey showed the video and the images he had received while giving the explanation. "Days ago, some patrollers have informed us about this strange event in the western sector by this strange race never seen before. It seems that he is stealing or devouring a strange object with the size of a little planet. We don't know his purpose, but if he has these capabilities it is possible that he could be a great threat to the peace of the universe. What do you think we should do, Emperor Frost?" Frost continued watching the video with interest and said, "You're right. If he is capable of what I am seeing, it means that either his power or his abilities are impressive. He is able to survive in space, a skill that few races in the universe own. Besides, we don't know anything about him or his race. I think I should go myself." The elite lackey, surprised, exclaimed, "Go yourself, Lord Frost. Don't you think we should send an exploration team first? It is too dangerous." Frost, laughing slightly and interpreting his role as a hero of justice, said, "You don't need to worry about my safety, I'll be fine. I don't want to send someone to a suicide mission. This being is powerful, strange, and is able to survive in space. I am one of the few people in the universe who may be able to confront him. As a leader, I must be the one to take risks at moments like these." The elite lackey, emotional and almost crying for the admiration he felt for his beloved leader, said, "You are the best, Majesty, it's a pride to be part of your ranks. Soon we will prepare your spaceship and an escort for this mission." However, while that poor idiot idolized him, Frost was thinking, "What a peculiar person, what a strange object. I have to know what that is and what he's doing, and maybe recruiting him. He can be a great acquisition for my Peace Corps, or for my galactic pirates. If it is a threat to the universe, I will gain fame. Of course, if I can't have him under my command, I will kill him to get rid of a great threat to my. Whatever happens, I will come out winning." Jua. It had been 4 months since Broly had been teleported to the Universe 6. During that time, he had found 3 of the 4 Super Dragon Balls that were in that universe. 2 of them were already inside his formless realm, and right now he was trying to absorb the 3rd, but it wasn't easy or cheap to absorb such a colossal thing. Finding the Dragon Ball wasn't a problem. He had the coordinates of all and the Kai, he could easily reach all of them in a matter of seconds. The problem was to absorb them. Absorbing each one had taken more than a month of hard work. Both, The body of the Universe 6 or the 7 had been absorbing the Super Dragon Balls, spending huge amounts of space of the formless realm, which Broly was trying to recover at the same time that he was spending. So much energy was needed to recover the lost space that Broly was transformed into his true Saiyan state during all those 4 months, to increase the amount of energy he could generate. Because he had divided his strength in half and was concentrating all his strength and attention in absorbing the Super Dragon Ball and recovering energies to continue absorbing his target, his N had concentrated drastically near the Super Dragon Ball. Leaving aside most of the things that were happening around him, including the fact that a spaceship had seen and reported him a few days ago. He had become impatient. For weeks he had only been able to eat senzu beans, he had barely slept and had barely been able to bathe. He was crazy to finish his mission to ask for his long-awaited wish. Therefore, his vigilance had dropped drastically. Nevertheless, he was happy. In less than 2 days the third and last Super Dragon Ball of the Universe 7 would be inside his formless realm, and in the Universe 6 in a few minutes he would manage to absorb the third, only being left another one more to collect all the 7. Come on motherfucker, come inside my fucking dimension. Right now. He was quite irritated, impatient, and somewhat bored. Nevertheless, in a few seconds someone would entertain him. Good morning. Could you explain to me, if you are so kind? Who are you and what are you doing here? Said an irritating voice that came telepathically to Broly's mind. They are in space, no sound. Broly, surprised and somewhat annoyed by the fact that someone interrupted him while he was insulting the Super Dragon Ball, slightly expanded his N. In the distance, he observed that someone was approaching him, and he was doing it at a great speed. Oops, look whom we have here. The biggest faker of the Dragon Ball multiverse, surely the only one who can compete with Mr. Satan. The losing version and cheating version of Frisia's in the Universe 6. Frost. What intentions will he have? Does he come to me as the hero Frost, or as the villain Frost? Whatever, this can be annoying, or interesting. Good afternoon. I'm someone, and I'm doing something, said Broly while he was still focused on devouring what was left of the Super Dragon Ball, something that would end in a few minutes. He needed to gain time. Frost, who was in his friendly hero of justice mode, upon hearing Broly's answer found it difficult to continue with that attitude, but he kept trying. It seems you don't know who I'm. Let me introduce myself first. I am Frost, the Emperor of the Universe and his guardian. A week ago, we detected that someone was making a strange object with the size of a planet disappear in a very curious way, and the images that have reached me shows you, in this same place at that moment, and for what can I see, you haven't moved from here, so it's useless to pretend ignorance. My duty is to ensure the safety of the universe, and I must know if you are a threat or not. Therefore, please, answer me. Who are you, what are you doing, and what is that strange object that is about to disappear? Oh, so that's what it's about. It seems that I have been discovered. This happens to me because I don't have patience. Well, it's not too serious either. It seems he doesn't know what the Super Dragon Ball are. Fuck, this faker is disgusting. At least Frisia is sincere, he doesn't cheat, he's a bastard and is proud of it. I'm just a cute, adorable little boy named Broly, who received a gift from his mother and dropped it, and I'm trying to pick it up, otherwise, she'll be very sad. So you don't have to worry, I'm not a threat. When I finish picking up I'll go, said Broly with a childish tone, trying to look cute. Frost began to think what to do with this situation. I don't know if he's a little boy with a hollow head and too much power, or a dwarf bastard who is laughing at me. However, I think the second option is more likely. I will try again. However, if I cannot use him for my purposes, it is better to kill him. Nobody laughs at me. Frost, keeping his composure, so Broly, I'll believe for now that that's your name, but I don't believe anything you said other than your name. I would be grateful if you would accompany me without resisting to the headquarters to get an adequate interrogation. Broly, who had 2 eyes on Frost and another on the nearly devoured Dragon Ball, said, I'm sorry, but I don't have time to go anywhere with you. Also, my mother has always told me not to go with strangers, especially when they are so ugly. Frost's attitude changed. There was no trace of the false kindness he had showed until now, only his natural hostility and coldness. I see. You are resisting authority. I think you will force me to use force. Since you have just been considered a serious threat to universal peace. Broly had been gaining time with this stupid conversation until his formless realm finished swallowing the Super Dragon Ball, and as he had calculated, just at that moment the arduous process of a month had ended. The logical thing would be to teleport me directly to the last Super Dragon Ball and end this as quickly. My power is halved due to the cloning technique, and it is not the best place in which I can fight, but my scion blood tells me to fight him, and destroy him. Feel honored, Alternative Frisia, you will be my first serious battle. I have reached the limit of my power years ago. Is possible that fight him will give me the push I need to become Super Saiyan. Use force? Does a half-meter like you know what force is? Come to me with all your power, little shit, said Broly, mocking Frost in a rather arrogant way. He no longer behaved like a small child. He looked like a demon, more demon than a Frost demon. Frost, extremely offended by how Broly had insulted him, attacked Broly with several bursts of ki fired from his finger. Half a meter? You are much smaller than I am. It was evident that he was as self-conscious about his size, just like Frisia. Broly, dodging all his attacks with great ease, said, continuing with the mockery, I am still a growing boy, however, you are, and you will be a fucking dwarf all your fucking sad and miserable existence. I would like to feel sorry for you, but you don't even deserve that. Frost, who could not stand that Broly was mocking about his biggest complex counterattack, increasing the rhythm of Ki's attacks. Fuck you. You will be shorter than me, so short that I can crush you with just lift my leg. But Broly, who had grown tired of that childish game, deflected with his fingers all the ki attacks of Frost, and before Frost could be surprised by what he had just done, he said, I find your lack of faith disturbing. I will be very, very tall. While Broly was saying those words, Frost felt pressure in his neck, which pressed him harder every second. It was as if an invisible hand was strangling him. Frost understood it perfectly. Damn, in this way I cannot beat him. Frost, who was in his first transformation, or involution, while he was being suffocated erotically without being able to escape due to the great difference of power between him and his rival, began to concentrate energy. Broly smiled satisfied. It was what he was waiting for from the first moment, his transformation. Great, finally I will have a minimally interesting combat. I'm such a good person that I'll squeeze you a little less so you can transform more quickly. After a brilliant explosion, Frost's transformation ended, but it wasn't the one Broly expected. It was the third transformation of Frisia, also known as the Big Head transformation, without a doubt the ugliest transformation that exists. Broly, disappointed by Frost's lack of intelligence in judging his opponent, and insulted by being underestimated by him for not using his most powerful form, decided to continue verbal and physical abuse. Fuck. You're so ugly that could be exposed in a contemporary art museum. Is your plan to defeat me to provoke an overload of ugliness? Ha ha ha. As much as you make your head grow, you will not be smarter. Fuck, you are ridiculous. Frost, annoyed by Broly's constant insults, went into a rage. Shut up, damn monkey. Frost, with 2 energy balls prepared in each hand, accelerated at full speed towards Broly, but in less than a second, he disappeared from his position. He turned his head several times to find him, but it was useless. He was unable to see him, but his instinct told him that something bad was about to happen. And he was right. Someone from behind grabbed him by the far end of his long head and started giving him a lot of painful kicks and knees in the head, back and neck. Frost was being beaten mercilessly. Broly, taking advantage of his small size, as if he were a koala, grabbed Frost's head, and while punishing his skull with his knuckles he continued insulting. Come on, Big Head, do something. Is this all the strength you have? What a shit emperor you are. Frost had just transformed into his last form, his original form, and his arrogance and confidence returned to him. I'm going to make you pay for all the humiliation. I will torture you until you ask for death, and then I will continue torturing you until you die, he said telepathically. Broly, with his usual casual attitude, replied, whatever you say, shitty dwarf. However, before that, what do you think about stopping this little ball? Broly threw him the giant Omega Blaster that he had been preparing, an Omega Blaster with an energy of 90.000.000 of power level, which he was using to force Frost to use most of his power from the beginning. A somewhat dangerous form of motivation. Frost, who was standing on the asteroid that Broly had thrown at him, saw that huge sphere of energy coming towards him at great speed. Realizing the great energy that this attack had, Frost began to increase his combat power, without holding back in the least, contrary to what he had always been doing. Frost didn't have time to counterattack that Omega Blaster with another sphere of ki, so he decided to stop using his hands and telekinesis. The Omega Blaster struck with Frost, and he held it with his hands and feet, and tried by all means to return it to Broly, while he watched him from the skies with superiority. Eh. After a few seconds of Forcejo, once Frost increased his combat power to 100 million, he was able to direct that giant Omega Blaster to its owner, who was in the same position from where he had launched his attack. When the giant green energy sphere reached the position of its owner, exploded. It exploded in an extremely violent manner, so much so that the shockwave changed the orbit of several satellites orbiting a desert planet in the vicinity. Frost, with a wicked smile, laughed uncontrollably, as if he were a lunatic. Ha ha ha. This is the consequence of making fun of Frost, the Emperor of the Universe. What are you saying now, damn monkey? How does it feel to die for your own attack? However, his celebration was somewhat interrupted. What I am saying now is that you should review things before taking them for granted. It's what distinguishes a good scientist from a fraudster social scientist who performs a lousy study on something that is only a cover to justify some pre-established conclusions, said Broly, who appeared a few dozen meters from Frost and was walking quietly towards him. Frost, somewhat disturbed by Broly's usual arrogance, and because he didn't understand how Broly had been able to appear so quickly from his back without him noticing, he started a conversation. Wow, I didn't understand half the nonsense you said, but I thought you had died like an idiot for your own attack a few seconds ago. How have you been able to get here so fast? I think it's not the first time you've done this since the beginning of the fight. Broly, he was more arrogant than Frost, said, die like an idiot? Ha ha ha, how pathetic you are. You've seen me teleport before, and you not only have to ask what I've done, but you also believed that I had died from my own attack despite my ability. Moreover, you dare to call me an idiot? You're the Emperor of the Idiots. Frost, irritated by Broly's attitude, twisted his face in anger, but, in a few seconds he calmed down because of the superiority he thought he now had. Okay. I cannot wait to see how long you can have this attitude in front of me. You will regret having made me show this transformation. Or rather, I'll make sure you regret doing it, when I pluck every last hair on your body and cut off that ridiculous tail you have, before killing you. Broly, unperturbed by Frost's threat, came within inches of him and answered. The only thing I will regret is surely not to tear your tongue. Only the strong have the right to brag in the middle of a fight, and you. You should be quiet until I give you permission. Stupid half shit. After those words of provocation, Frost, furious, started the fight once more, rushing towards Broly with his punch. The fight had begun again. Frost started the attack, throwing a rain of punches in race towards Broly. However, Broly, with his arms crossed, for greater cockiness, began to dodge all the attacks. Frost, for more than 10 seconds Frost was trying to hit Broly with everything he could, with his legs, his arms, even his tail, but everything was useless. It was like trying to catch some kind mutant fly. Impossible, this cannot be happening. I'm clearly faster than him. How can he dodge all my attacks? Frost's fighting power right now was close to 105.000.000, while Broly's was still 75.000.000. Greater combat power means having a higher level of strength, endurance and speed, except for transformations or techniques that sacrifice one stat to forcefully increase another. In addition, Frost demons were a race that stood out for its speed. The fact that Frost was unable to reach him was inconceivable, not only for him, but for anyone who could see the fight. How was Broly able to show this superiority with that discrepancy of power and speed? It was due to two reasons. 1. His Jugen, he can see minimal movements, and predict the attacks of opponents even before they are executed, anticipating all of Frost's attacks. 2. His Kin, Broly was using the Kin at a low intensity, which allowed him to improve all his abilities without increasing his fighting power. The Kin at its maximum kappa. City multiplied by 3 its effective fighting power, although now only was at his 10%. With these two advantages, Frost was unable to hit him. Broly, levitating, continued to dodge all of Frost's attacks in a millimetric way, making Frost believe that he needed little to reach him, frustrating him even more. However, Broly had already tired of evading. What's happening to you? Are you so useless that I have to teach you to hit too? It has to be done like this, said Broly, accelerating quickly towards him, giving him a forceful kick in the belly. Gwaj. Frost received a great damage by the kick, so much that his body seemed to writhe around the impact, but he smiled. While his body was still shacked by the impact, his tail quickly wrapped around Broly's leg, preventing him from flying off hundreds of meters by the impact, and, above all, limiting Broly's movements. Frost, seeing that he couldn't reach him, had waited for the moment when Broly attacked to grab him, preventing him from escaping. Oh, not bad, thought Broly. Die. Frost using practically all his power threw a punch in Broly's belly, impacting. Broly was affected by that attack, recoiling from the inertia of the blow, but because Frost was still tying his leg with his tail, Broly didn't move. Because his attack took effect, Frost entered a state of frenzy, creating a barrage of punches that completely hit Broly's body and face. Take this. Take this. Take this. Take this. Take this. You like this? You like this? You like this? Ha 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 ha. Where is the arrogance you had a few moments ago now? But when he went to throw his last punch, when finishing that sentence, Broly with some blood on his face, caused by small wounds, he intercepted it with his hand. It is exactly where it was before. I congratulate you, you are the second person who has managed to hurt me, although of course, I allowed you to hit me a little bit. I'm sorry to spoil your fun, but I am one of those who prefer to give and not receive. Palm. Broly, still grabbed by Frost's tail, gave him a terrible punch in the mouth. Oya haya haya. Frost writhed in pain, but immediately responded with another punch, which Broly stopped with his elbow and countered with his other hand, giving him a punch in the belly. Damn! He cried out in helplessness. Still caught by the tail, another rain of punching and kicking began between the two, although it was evident who was being the winner of that crossfire. Of every 4 hits that managed to hit his target successfully, 3 were blows from Broly, and 1 was from Frost, but despite the handicap he was in, he didn't want to let go of Broly's leg. One of the reasons why he was reluctant to let him go was because of his speed and ability to dodge. He didn't know if he could catch him again, and the second reason. Fucking monkey, don't think you're superior to me, I have many aces under my sleeve yet. From the bioarmor of Frost's right arm appeared a needle that oozed what appeared to be a potent poison with paralyzing and somnolent properties, and pointing it to the leg he was holding with his tail, threw a punch at it. Die, dumbass. Frost's punch hit Broly's leg squarely, just as he had planned. Ha ha ha. Perfect, now you are helpless before me. Taking advantage of the fact that the venom of his needle should have taken effect and that it would last a few seconds. With his other hand, he tried to gather almost all his ki on his finger to give him the final blow, which he could prepare and launch without worries, but crack. Ay. Broly grabbed him by the finger with which Frost was preparing his attack and twisted it, breaking it in several places. Didn't your mother tell you that it's impolite to point out people? Broly said as he continued to grab his broken finger, to increase his agony. While Frost tried to cool his mind due to the great pain he was suffering. His mind went into chaos. He didn't understand how Broly could be well after being poisoned, but before he could put it into words. Your next line will be, how can you be well after being punctured by my poisonous needle? Right? Broly said, doing a cool pose. Frost, practically at the same moment that Broly was talking, said, how can you be well after being punctured by my poisonous needle? What? His mind had gone blank. Not only did he know about the needle, it was as if he had read his mind. Broly, strutting like never before, said in JoJo style, said, the answer is, I used my telekinesis to return the needle inside its case moments before the impact, so it never clicked on me. Frost looked at the bioarmor of his arm and verified that someone had forced the mechanism of the needle. Alarmed, he wanted to ask another question, but your next line will be, how did you know I had a needle hidden in my bioarmor? No one had ever found her. Right? Broly said, anticipating Frost's words. Frost, once again, at the same moment that Broly was talking, said, how did you know I had a needle hidden in my bioarmor? No one had ever found her. What? Impossible! Exclaimed Frost, who believed he was living a nightmare. Does this child have the ability to read the mind? Broly, tightening Frost's broken finger. Aw. I'm sorry, but I cannot read the mind, just all the idiots think the same. Moreover, the answer is, I know it because nothing can escape my eye, also because I had seen it in the manga and anime. By the way, do you plan to continue grabbing me much longer? Those who see us can make wrong ideas, said Broly while the part of the leg that was being held by Frost began to emit a green glow. That green glow grew into a disc of energy that swirled around his leg, cutting Frost's tail into pieces. Ayahai. Due to the pain, Frost squealed uncontrollably at the same time that he recoiled at great speed to get away from Broly. A fight against a frost demon is not a fight if you don't cut off his tail, ha 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 ha, said Broly as he kicked the air, sending the cutting disc towards Frost. Frost, who could react in time, dodged the attack that came directly to his head, cutting only part of his cheek. Impossible. This is impossible. I am stronger than you. My energy is superior. How is it possible that I am losing like this? Frost yelled at Broly, demanding an explanation. It's because my martial arts and other techniques are superior. Weak people created martial arts in order to make the most of their weakness to win people, animals, and beings stronger than them. Only an idiot believes that a bodybuilder who raises more than 100 kilograms in a gym is stronger in a fight than a thin, experienced martial artist who knows where to hit and move. Stop talking, if this is all you have. I've already lost enough time with you. You have turned out to be a disappointment. I haven't needed even 20% of my skills to crush you like a cockroach. At least you have helped me exercise a bit. As a reward, I will give you the honor of seeing me fight with some of my real power. Try not to die. Before Frost could process all that avalanche of information, Broly had appeared in front of him, and using his Kaiohin to the fullest capacity, he punched him in the face. Frost was shot several kilometers, but during his journey, Broly reappeared from his back, giving him another blow that sent him in another direction, repeating this sequence dozens of times. In one of them, Broly with both fists, and as if Frost were a volleyball, he threw him on the asteroid again, just in front of his torn of tail. Ah. Frost was full of wounds and bruises, his face was practically unrecognizable and he had hardly any energy. Just as he was getting up, leaning his knees and knobs against the ground, Broly landed on him, sinking him into the ground once more. Broly, stretching as if he had just taken a nap, advanced towards the mutilated piece of Frost's tail. It's been quite fun, I hope you've had a good time too, ha ha ha. Frost, trying to get up one more time, damn. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Broly, picking up Frost's tail, said as if he were the emperor of the universe, if I were you, I wouldn't get up. Kneel. After those words, Frost's body began to gain weight, several times. It was as if the gravity around him was dramatically increasing, at least 400 times higher than normal. Damned demon. What are you doing? What is this? Frost said, kneeling as he tried to get up without success. Broly walked slowly towards him and materializing a throne in front of the kneeling Frost sat down and said, I am simply ordering the Emperor of the Universe to kneel before me, and I see that he knows how to obey. Know your place, little shit. Well, I've had a great time with you, but I think I should leave you for today, I have better things to do. Oh, by the way, I'm taking your tail, it may be used to make a broth or something. We'll see each other again. Saying these words, Broly stepped away from the throne and stored Frost's tail into his formless realm. After a few seconds, the gravity returned to normal, and Frost got up as best he could. I will take revenge, I swear I will take revenge. I will personally take care that there is not a single corner in the universe where you can hide or live. I will hunt you day and night with all the means at my disposal. It is not a threat, it is an oath, Frost said with the veins of his head trembling. His anger had reached a limit he didn't think possible. Broly, who was about to disappear with his Kai, turned arrogantly to where the badly wounded Frost was and said, all your means. Does that also include your galactic pirates? If you know what is good for you, you will not try to bother me. Or I will not be so good the next time. Goodbye. Broly had disappeared, teleporting to another place. The threat had disappeared, Frost was safe from that psychopathic child, but for Frost, his biggest nightmare had just begun. He knows, my biggest secret, if anyone finds out about this, I'm finished, it'll be my end. I have to kill him to take revenge. I have to kill him to silence him. Either way I have to kill him. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.